Hi, my name is Jeanette Patton, and today I will be telling you about why embryonic stem cell research should be disbanded in America. What human has a right to decide whether another person gets the opportunity to live? That is the issue at hand. Embryonic stem cell research has become a growing field in the scientific world. There is a hope that medical advancements can be made through these cells, but at what costs? At the stage the embryonic stem cells are being gathered and harvested, they have reached a point of development which is considered human life. An unborn fetus, now held in a laboratory pan, is being pulled apart, tested, remade, and dissected for the sake of scientific research. The studies have yet to benefit humans, and it will be many years before it can do so. The field of study is unethical and wrong. It needs to be stopped. Regardless of the potential benefits, this study is not worth the costs. Today I would like to talk to you first about stem cell research. I would like to talk to you about it as a whole, and then specifically embryonic. Second, the positive and negative effects the embryonic stem cell research is having on our nation. And then finally, why this research is wrong, and what we are condoning as Americans if we do not put a stop to it. Collins English Dictionary states that a stem cell is an undifferentiated cell that gives rise to specialized cells such as blood cells. End quote. In other words, they can be manipulated and cultured into almost any type of cell. The cells have provided advancements in medicine. As you see, basically any dead cell can be replaced with a new healthy cell thanks to the genetic makeup of stem cells. The problem arises in where researchers are gathering these stem cells from. They can be gathered from three primary sources: adult cells, cord cells, and embryonic cells. Adult cells can be found and taken from bone marrow in an adult, as well as the purpura system. Cord cell stems can be taken directly from umbilical cords after the birth of a child. And lastly, we reach the topic of our discussion, embryonic cells. These are taken from stem cells directly from an embryo, and they are only allowed to live to be developed so that they can double or triple in size and then used for scientific research. Professor David Prentice agrees with the definition of an embryo. He believes that this is an unhatched, unborn offspring which has reached a stage of development. He does not think this research is ethical or worth time and money being invested into it. He states, "The biological fact is that an early human embryo is an organism, a member of the human species. It is not just a collection of cells any more so than an adult human is a collection of cells." End quote. Furthermore, the funds for this study are coming from our government, therefore from our American taxes. We are paying for a study that is still having no benefit on our American citizens. Based on the definition of embryo, no matter how you look at the matter, scientifically an embryo is a fetus, an unborn child, and it has just as much right to live as we do. We should be pursuing the alternatives, cord cell and adult cell research. As Bradley Matz, Executive Director of Life Issues Institute, states in his article, Embryonic versus Adult Stem Cell, adult stem cells can be harvested without loss of life, and they are readily available from bone marrow, skin, fat, umbilical cord blood, and other sources. End quote. Researchers have begun making excuses in order to continue this unethical practice. There are a couple positive lights to this research, however. There is hope that by manipulating and testing on these embryos for science, advancements can be made in the medical world. Dan S. Kaufman, in his article, Embryonic Stem Cell Research, Experts Debate the Pros and Cons, states this: "It is important to recognize that human embryonic stem cells come from embryos created in excess fertility clinics. All of these embryos will be destroyed if they are not donated by couples specifically to produce embryonic stem cells for biomedical research. The question then is this: what is the most respectful way to treat these valuable embryos?" End quote. I would like to ask Dan S. Kaufman, do you think that the most respectful way to treat them is to dissect and kill them just for the sake of your research? The following quote explains more why the lack of progress in this field is a waste of our nation's resources. Leading researchers continue to note that it will be decades at best before the embryonic stem cells might possibly be used for patients. In the meantime, hundreds of published references document the ability of adult stem cells from bone marrow, umbilical cord blood, and even fat tissue in effectively eliminating symptoms of dozens of diseases. If it is our intent to help patients first, wise use of resources demands that we focus on adult stem cell research. End quote. This was said by David Prentice. I hope you are now seeing why this field is not a wise use of our nation's resources, and starting to understand some of the problems behind the study. You may still be wondering why the cons strongly outweigh the pros. So let me continue on to my next point. No American would try to argue that murder should be legalized. So why then do we as American citizens allow studies such as embryonic stem cell research to continue? Evidence has shown, and definition has proved, that an embryo is indeed an unborn offspring. Regardless of how, where, or why the fetus is here, it is not our choice to be rid of it, for our own gain or for our own convenience. An embryo inside a mom at only a few weeks is an unborn child. This child has a right at life, even if it is inconvenient to the mother. An embryo cultured and stored in a laboratory pan is again an unborn child, and he should have just as much a right to live as any other citizen in America. Furthermore, based on biblical principles, we are able to see more clearly why this practice is wrong. I use biblical principles and the Holy Bible as a source because our culture was founded on Judeo-Christian roots, and as such, the Bible should hold just as much weight as many other historical documents. Our founding fathers used biblical principles to help them form the Declaration of Independence. Jeremiah 1:5 states, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I sanctified you. I ordained you a prophet to the nations." End quote. The Bible states that the God of the universe designs each one of us and knows us before we are conceived. It is not our right to decide who gets a chance at life. That right is only God's. If our nation chose to build its foundations on these principles, we as the people of America should be fighting to keep them preserved. As you now understand, embryonic stem cell research is taking away a life for scientific advancements. This practice is wrong and needs to be stopped. I told you where the stem cells come from and the issue of harvesting them from embryonic stem cells. I told you the pros and cons of this research and why it is not benefiting humans yet. And finally, I have shown you why it is ethically wrong and what we as a nation are condoning if we continue to allow it. America needs to stand up for the principles that we founded our nation upon, and we need to stop practices such as embryonic stem cell research. Think, what if you were that embryo? What if you or someone you loved were held in a small pan at the size of an embryo, and then some scientist came along and decided that you didn't get a right to live, that your life should be sacrificed for the sake of science and medical research? Regardless of the circumstance, an embryo is a life, and no human has the right to decide whether another should get a chance to live. In conclusion, at the stage the researchers are harvesting embryos, the stem cell is indeed a form of life. It is an unhatched and unborn offspring in the process of developing human features. In order to allow using embryos due to the fact that they simply may never be implanted would be to encourage destroying human life. This kind of action should never be condoned under any circumstance, especially when we have other avenues that we could be pursuing that we have seen more success and benefits from. No matter how you turn this situation or ask the question, we are faced with the same scenarios. A life being taken away before even getting a chance to begin. The line needs to be drawn in our nation, and research needs to be made using other ethical stem cell options. For a life taken to save a life is no life saved at all.